Hello again, everybody. Earlier this week, we worked on using our Desmos calculator to do order of operations problems. And today, we are going to use our Desmos calculator again to evaluate algebraic expressions. Now remember, the algebraic expressions are the problems that had variables in them. So here are some problems that we're going to do. And you'll notice that all of these problems have variables in them. And then I have given you values that can be substituted for those variables. So if we were to do these problems by hand, we would substitute the numbers for the variables, and then we would use GEMDOS to work them out. But again today, since this is really intended to be a calculator practice day, we are going to do these problems without showing our work. We're going to do these problems by using the calculator to help us. Now, just to kind of remind you of some things that we can do here, I need to be able to see this set of problems along with my calculator. So I'm going to click up here at the top. And you can drag to the left or to the right, it really doesn't matter, but drag as far as it'll go, and that will allow it to only fill up half of your screen. And then the other place I'm going to go is to my Schoology page. So you'll need to open your assignment and open the Desmos calculator to do this. I'm going to go down on my Schoology page till I see Online Calculator. I'm going to click on the link to the Desmos calculator, and once it's open, I'm going to click and drag it to the other side of my screen all the way so that it fills up the other half. And you'll notice here that I'm going to have to, there we go, get this set just right. Okay, now again, not going to use this graphing area today. We're concerned about this area over here where we can enter problems. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull up my keypad. We can use our calculator, or our computer, keyboard to type these problems in, but there are some things on this keypad that I think are a little handier. All right, so here's what we're going to do on this problem. We are not going to sub -4 for this A and 5 for this B as we type this problem in. Instead, we're going to type this problem in exactly the way we see it. Now, on the Desmos calculator, you'll notice right here, you've got ABC. That is your alphabet, which you also have on your keypad. So I'm going to type this in exactly the way I see it. So I'm going to type a 7, and then parentheses, and then I need A plus 4. So here's where I'm going to go to my ABC button and click that. There's my A. Or I can press the A that is on my computer keyboard. Okay. To go back, I can click the numbers, and that'll bring me back to the keypad that I have. Plus 4. Now I want to be out of parentheses. And then I want to do plus 3B. I'm going to go ahead and use my computer keyboard for the B. I think it's easier. And then minus 8. It's easier than having to hit that ABC. So I want you to notice that this problem looks exactly the way that it does over here on this paper. Now you'll also notice that down below here it says to add a slider. And it lists A and it lists B. It lists the two variables that are in our problem, then it says all. So I'm going to go ahead and click all. And what you'll notice is down below here, it says that right now it's using A equal to 1 and B equal to 1. Well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted A to be a -4 and B to be 5. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click right here to the right of this 1, and I am going to backspace and change that A to a -4. Then I'm going to come down here beside B equals 1, and again, I'm going to click to the right of that 1, and I'm going to backspace and change that B to a 5. Now, once I've done that, you'll see up here that here is the answer for my problem. So the calculator is plugging in -4 for A, and it's plugging in 5 for B, and then it's working out the answer, and it tells me that that answer should be 7. So instead of writing down all of that work today, I want you to practice putting these same problems in on your calculator so we can kind of get used to that. So again, you're using your alphabet on your computer keyboard. I think that's going to be easier for us to enter that problem. All right, now that I'm finished with number 1, I don't want all of this stuff on my screen. So I can come up here and I can X all of these things out so that I can start on this problem 2. Now for problem 2, I'm doing the square root of x minus z to the second power. And I want x to be 16 and z to be -3. So the first thing I'm going to do is give Desmos my problem. And I'm going to type it exactly like I see it. So I'm going to come over here and get my square root and use my computer keyboard to type in the x. Remember, you're going to have to hit your right arrow to get out of that square root because we don't want the minus z squared to be inside of there. So then I'm going to do minus, press the Z on my computer keyboard, and then hit my A to the second power. So notice I have exactly the same problem right now in my calculator that I have over here. All right, so we're going to add our slider. Hold on, he didn't give me an X slider. Why not? Okay, let's see. Let me go back up here and see if this makes a difference. If I backspace and then use an X from here. No, it doesn't make a difference. Okay. All right, I think what we may have to do is not use the variable x, because you notice over here we've got this graph popping up, and I think that's may be related to that x. So let's do this. Let's change that x to an a. So instead of the square root of x minus z squared, let's make it the square root of a minus z squared. And now it will let me add a slider as well for a. So for problems that have the variable x, let's use another letter in its place. You would have to be careful about what letter you choose because if a was in the problem somewhere else, you wouldn't want to use that same letter. All right, so now let's change our numbers. All right, so we wanted our x to be 16, which means we want a to be 16. And we wanted our z to be a -3. So we're going to put in -3 for z. And then there's my answer, which is a -5. So I know that that's a little bit of a problem for us, that it won't let us use the letter x. But let's just do this. If there's an x in the problem, change it to a letter, another letter that isn't in the problem. All right, so -5 would be the answer for number 2. All right, so let's X out of those, and let's go to this problem 3. All right, so on problem 3, we're going to do 5c, and we want to raise c to the third power. So we want to use our a to the b power key and put in that 3. Remember from our discussion earlier in the week, you'll have to hit the right arrow to get that cursor to come down. And then we don't want to do minus 6c squared. And then we'll do minus 2c. I really do think it's going to be better for you all to use the computer keyboard to enter the letters. It's much easier than this ABC option down here, although you can do either. Now, notice that this has c set at 1. We want c to be a -5. So we'll click to the right of that 1 and backspace, and then change that 1 to a -5. And notice that our answer is a negative 765. So this will make life easy for you. It's also going to be a good way that you can check your answers to problems when you have to show the work. Do all the work by hand and then go to that Desmos calculator and type the problem in and make sure your answer agrees. All right, so on this next one, number 4, we want 4 parentheses, and then we want C plus 5. Now we need to close our parentheses and then do minus F, and we want to do a to the b power to raise that to the 4th power. Now again, always check what you have typed here to make sure it looks like what's on your paper, and it does. So now let's add our sliders for all these variables. Right now this calculator has C set to 1. Notice over here they're out of order. Over here in our problem, out of order, we want C to be negative 1, so I'm going to backspace and type in negative 1. And then for F, we want F to be 4, so again I'll click to the right of it, backspace, and change that number to a 4. So with negative 1 for C and 4 for F, this expression has a value of negative 240. All right, now, next up we have number 5. Now notice that number 5 has an X in it. We're not going to want to use that X. The only other letter in this problem is a W, so that's the only thing we shouldn't replace X with. So you can use any other letter of the alphabet besides W to stand in place of that X. All right, so we're going to do negative 3 first. Now remember, you use your subtraction sign for your negative. And remember when we talked about this earlier in the week that those brackets don't really work. So when we see brackets, we type parentheses instead. That's the only kind of grouping symbol that Desmos has. So we use those. So notice I'm going to have to do bracket parentheses, which means I'm going to do parentheses, parentheses. Now I want to do W minus 6. So using my computer keyboard, I type in the W, and then I get my minus 6. Notice that I want to close parentheses and square. So I close my parentheses, and then I hit my a squared to get that exponent. And then I have plus x. Now here's where I got to make a change because it won't let me use x. So I'm going to do plus a. A won't mess me up. That's an entirely different letter. And then notice I want my bracket, and then I need an exponent of 2. So I'm going to hit a squared again. So again, compare what you have typed here to what you have typed here, and it matches. It looks pretty good. So now add your sliders. W, according to the problem, we want to be 5, so backspace and change him to a 5. The A, which we are using in place of X, we want to be 6, so we will backspace and change that A to a 6. And when we do that, this expression has a value of negative 147. So reminders on this one. No brackets, use parentheses where they are. And anytime there's an X, use a different letter in place of X. But don't use a letter that is also in the same problem. So I wouldn't want to use W for X here. I want to use something that's not in that problem. All right. Moving on to number 6. Now notice we see one of those fraction bar problems like we talked about earlier this week. Remember that the helpful hint for that is to hit the division symbol first. So you'll notice that my cursor is at the top of my fraction and the bottom is that gray box. So I want to do 2c to the 3rd power minus ab. So I'm going to do 2, press C on the computer keyboard. To raise him to the 3rd power, I do a to the b power and then hit 3. Notice my cursor is up high there still, so I want to hit my right arrow to bring him back down. And then I want to do minus AB. So I'll hit A followed by B on my computer keyboard. So look at your top right here, look at your top right here, they match, so we're good. Click in the bottom, and we're going to just type in a 4 right there. Now we'll add our sliders. Notice that C, then A, then B, they're kind of out of order, so be careful here. We wanted C to be 4, so backspace and change that 1 to a 4. We wanted A to be 12, so we really don't need to backspace here. We've already got the 1, so we'll just go ahead and add the 2 behind that. And then click right there beside that 1 and backspace so that you can change the B to a 9. So if it puts, for some reason, the letters here match the order of the problem. But if that doesn't happen, just watch and be careful. All right, so when we make C4, A12, and B9, the answer to our problem is 5. So what you're doing here is you're telling the calculator, first of all, what the problem looks like. You're saying, here's the problem I've got to work out. And then you are able to tell your calculator, here's what I want the A, the B, and the C to be. Here's the numbers that I need you to plug in for those variables. So it's kind of a handy thing. And again, a good way to check your work. All right, so down to number 7. Notice in number 7 that we have the variable x. So we're going to want to change that x to something else. I kind of suspect the same thing is going to happen with y because I notice that y is over here just like x is. We'll test it out and see. But we definitely are going to have to use a different letter for that x. I wouldn't use y and I wouldn't use z because those are already in the problem. So we need to pick a letter besides y or z to use for x. I think a would work just fine. So on this one we're going to do absolute value first. And then we're going to do a negative 2a plus 7. Now, we want to get outside of those absolute value bars. So now we're going to do minus 3y. Now, we are going to have the same problem because notice when I type that y, it doesn't give me the option of making a slider for y. So the x and the y that are over here on the Desmos keypad, you are not going to want to use. So I'm going to need to replace that y as well. So we won't want to use z for either one of these. So let's just go ahead and use a b where that y was. And then we want plus 4z squared. I kind of imagine that the reason that's happening to us is that x and y you all will see as we go through the year. X and y are the two variables that are used in most algebraic equations, especially when you're graphing. So I think that's why. Because you all remember over here on this graph that this is the x-axis. And this is the y-axis. So I think when we try to use x and y in these problems, it's confusing it with trying to graph x and y-axis over here. So the moral of the story is, don't use x and y. If you get a problem like this number 7 that uses an x and a y, use different letters. You choose. You wouldn't want to use z though because he's already in the problem. I think it would be an easy change just to use A's for X's and B's for Y's. The only time we wouldn't want to do that is if those two letters were already in the problem. All right, let's make our sliders. All right, now the A is standing in place for the X. So we wanted X to be a negative 4. So we're going to click over here and backspace and change that A to a negative 4. The B is standing in place for the Y. So I'm going to come over here for B, and I'm going to backspace, and I'm going to change that to a negative 8. And then Z, I want to be a negative 1, so I'm going to backspace and make him a negative 1. So when I'm using negative 4 for X, negative 8 for Y, and negative 1 for Z, then this expression is going to have a value of 43. All right, one last problem. S to the second power t minus 10. And we want S to be a negative 8 and t to be 3/4. All right, So first, let's type the letter S, and then to raise it to the second power, we'll hit a squared. Then we'll hit T, and then we'll do minus 10. So notice, my problem looks exactly the way it looks over here. Now, let's add our sliders. Currently, S is set at 1. We want S to be a -8. So we are going to click beside the 1, backspace, and type in -8. For T, we're set at 1. We want 3/4, so we are going to click beside the 1 and backspace. To type in 3/4, remember, divide is the same thing as a fraction bar, so we'll do 3 on top and 4 on the bottom. And you'll notice with S set to -8 and T set to 3/4 that that expression has a value of 38. Okay, so to kind of recap, we're doing the same thing we did on Monday. You are typing problems into your Desmos calculator and then letting it do the work. So you're not going to show any work at all today. Here are the things that we have learned as we've gone through this. When you type the problem into the calculator, I think it's going to be easier for you to use the alphabet on your computer keyboard instead of this ABC option. Because that's kind of irritating that after you come over here and pick your letter that you have to hit the numbers to go back to this keyboard. So I think I definitely would use the computer keyboard to type the letters. We have also seen that we can't use X because it's over here and that messes with our graphing stuff. So if you see X in a problem, pick a different letter and make sure it's not a letter that's in the problem. So like on this one, I wouldn't want to use Z, but I could use any other letter I wanted. On this one, I wouldn't want to use W, but I could use any other letter I wanted. On this one, I wouldn't want to use Z, but I could use any other letter I wanted. And we also saw that Y has the same problem. So if Y is in your problem, don't use that one either. Pick another letter. Hopefully that makes sense. Type carefully. Double check what you've typed to make sure it matches up. And if there are any questions at all, you be sure and let me know.